Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Obsessing over every detail means we're confident in offering a 100% quality guarantee. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try with this special offer. Get a Harry starter set with a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, shave gel, and a travel cover, all for just $3 plus free shipping. Just go to harrys.com and enter 8899 at checkout. That's harrys.com, code 8899. Enjoy.
KGO 810. You can now listen at home by simply saying, Alexa, play KGO 810. Now, here's Chip Franklin.
So how many people have been called back to work, and how many of you don't feel comfortable with that? Now, I get in some cases you got to be there. I know that a friend of mine is a pharmaceutical rep, and they've told her that she has to go back and see doctors. And she's worried, as you would be, right? I mean, this thing is spiking, and those are dangerous places. But I also understand their point of view that it's a job. But what about like businesses that call you to come back, even though maybe just don't like you working at home? We told that story yesterday about the University of Florida is telling people that if you work home, you can't care for your kids too. And I'm like, what are they going to call up? And you think their kid is going to answer the phone and go, Beans and Associate? No, that's not what's going to happen. But if a kid's there and you need to do something with the kid, you do. You probably have an office. I don't know, man. This whole thing. Sometimes I feel like we're really missing the point. Restaurants across the country, including here in the Bay Area, are struggling with the question: what are your rights as you go back to work? So we thought we'd talk to somebody that knew all this stuff. Richard Bell is an attorney, a legal analyst, and an attorney who specializes in liability questions, and he's nice enough to join us here on KGO. Hi, Richard. Good afternoon.
Hi, Chip.
All right, so what is the biggest problem facing employees and employers as we kind of struggle to, find our footing in this mess?
Sure. Well, I think number one is we certainly hope that employers understand the seriousness of their role during this stage of the pandemic, because they are bringing in people who are going to be exposed if they don't follow all the safety rules and the safety recommendations that are out there. So number one, as an employee, the first thing you want to do is when you get back to work is to make sure there are very specific plans and procedures that your boss has put into effect.
But again, that's maybe not down your wheelhouse. How do you know what are the ones? I mean, do you go online and how do you go to your boss and say, hey, you're screwing this up?
Well, I'll tell you, you see what's going on in Oakland and Chicago where these McDonald's employees, they went to work and the procedures that were being followed were not very safe in their opinion, and they literally went to court. Actually, I think there's a hearing on today in Oakland in the Oakland case. And what they did was their lawyers argued that there is this old theory called public nuisance law. It goes back many centuries, and literally it's to make sure that there's not an unreasonable interference with the right to common to the general public. What's the right here? The right, obviously, is good health and safety. So they have literally had a judge. The judge in Oakland actually closed down the McDonald's and is holding a hearing today about their practices of inadequate masks. This is the one where they were using coffee filters and dog diapers allegedly as masks and having poor enforcement of social distancing. And the judge in Chicago, she held 4 days of hearings where she had medical testimony and employees, and she said, hey, you're doing a pretty good job in a pandemic. Pretty good isn't enough. And she ordered specific things about social distancing and mask policy. So that's one way. Now, that's the extreme, obviously, because it went to court.
Do people – I'm just thinking about people that are working in a McDonald's, and, it's an hourly wage. It's, they don't go home at night and think about, oh, what am I going to do tomorrow that it can be better? They're there to make a few bucks, right? Yeah. So if they start this, right, they're going to, there's a million ways you can get fired, and they say, no, that's not what it was for. They did this or they did that. And they just want to get their time in. And, most people just kind of push through idiots, and especially bosses that are idiots, because there's a whole nother level of weirdness and ignorance at that level. And then, most of the time it doesn't work out in their behalf. There's actually winning a case like in court against somebody when, you're the plaintiff is difficult. And then are you working during that time? What's your work experience like? How do other people treat you? All the extra stress. Do you think most people probably don't do this?
Most people probably don't. So if you're not going to go to that extreme, although we understand this is your health, this is
sure.
not just a bad work situation. This could result in death. So it's not a joke. So most people, in the first instance, you go to your employer. If you have a union, you go to your union boss. Forget about OSHA. They apparently have no interest in this, so they seem to be doing the same. We'll get to it. So forget about them. There's the local Department of Health. And, obviously then there's a lawyer. But you really want to get to the point where it's not just you. Hopefully there's a bunch of other employees, because then it makes it a tough situation for the boss if there's 6 unhappy people there instead of 1.
Yeah, right. And I guess, do you have a right in many places to go over and talk to other people and try to organize, whether or not it's just you? Does everybody feel that way? And other people will, if people say, what are you rocking the boat for? But let's be very specific about this, okay? We have a president who doesn't wear a mask, and for the longest time, a vice president and the people in his administration, okay? So there's no, again, if your boss or your immediate supervisor is conservative and just doesn't believe that this is a situation like that, or, maybe they don't wear their mask and you have to wear yours, and that makes you feel uncomfortable because obviously your mask is protecting other people, not protecting you, unless you have, an N95, right? So, I guess my point is that this seems to me there's a lot of gray area in there, and I hear what you're doing, and I think it's a good thing. I think people should understand their rights, especially when it comes to contracting a virus that could end their life. But let's get out of McDonald's and let's go into a regular workplace. As far as like social distancing and wearing masks, if it's not mandatory, and if it is mandatory, so if my boss doesn't have his or her mask on, and we're in like a workplace, and I'm coming down the hall. Do I? If I say something, then he'll put the mask on and remember that forever, and it's gonna hurt me.
Yeah, there's no question. There's that very practical aspect that you're talking about, because it's a workplace, and California, like many states, are what are called at-will states, which means you can be fired for no reason, unless you have a contractual relationship, other than obviously discrimination and a few other exceptions. But you're right, on a very pragmatic level. Yes, you're in the position where the boss is in charge of this. Now, like I said, you can always drop it down with the Department of Health or another governmental agency anonymously. The chances of them getting there in time to help people, not so good, because it's a massive pandemic that's going on at the time. But the best you can do, like I said, if 8 people went to the boss instead of 1, that's always good.
Sure.
You're not singled out, at least, if nothing else.
It takes courage. It takes courage to be a whistleblower. Look at the whistleblowers in this administration that Trump has gone after. They've suffered, and so you're looking at that.
Chip, you're talking to someone that has thought that the last 3.5 years has been the worst disaster in our history. So I'm with you. And you're right. It takes a lot of courage to be a whistleblower or someone that organizes people. But I think what people need to think about is the consequences of not. This is not just, hey, I don't like the way they talk to me, or I don't like the assignments they give me. This really is life or death. We're in a very different place right now. So mustering up the courage could be the difference between you're getting sick or even passing it on to some family member and somebody dying.
I believe you're 100% right, and I think that it's It's always going to be difficult, especially when you're dealing with a big corporation and you're just an employee. And, again, it comes down to distancing of masks right now. And obviously, that's people, like I said, I did have my mask on, even though it's not, down on their chin or whatever. I mean, this is the thing that kills me is that, we've seen studies now that say if 95% of Americans wore their mask, we could stop this thing in its tracks.
And it's the most simple thing in the world. What is the big sacrifice? This isn't like World War II and the Depression where our fathers and grandfathers and grandmothers made real sacrifices. What is the big deal?